Well, I'll tell you one thing. The audience is anything but sleepy after having seen your film. You know, I still remember, you know, I cheated. I saw it a couple of months ago. And I was speechless for a long time after. But I've had a chance to recollect my thoughts. I'm here with Dennis Scholl from
Hi, Dennis.
Hey Julian, how you been?
So we're going to assault you with a couple of questions that I hope are not too taxing at this time of night. But anyways, this is not the first time that you've made a film that deals with expressing the inexpressible. Was this a particular challenge, and what relation does it bear to your other film work?
Maybe that's the goal of all art, to express the inexpressible. And I don't know if we all get to do that or not, but it's a good intention. And I guess whether it's a painting or it's a film, or it's whatever kind of form that anyone would take up to address the making of art, I guess it's not a bad goal. And obviously, more specifically in this film, it's about trying to confront. You see a Van Gogh painting, and you can see all the marks on it. You can see the physical reality of it, but somehow when you look at it, something happens that's outside of the painting, that has to do with some feeling, and hopefully, or I think what we tried to address in the movie is the feeling that provokes somebody to do that, and the way you feel after you've done that, and the way you feel in the process of doing that. And that feeling is what is the guide and what is the goal, not other people's agreement or response to what you're doing. It's your own inner voyage and what comes out of that. And I guess that's the first part of the answer. The second part would be, in this particular film, it's probably, I don't think I could have made this movie before I made the other ones. And in the process of making the 6 films, this one, I think, I guess I was more familiar with the materials, and I felt like I could, you can't separate the content from the form. And I think that the storytelling is not a simple narrative of telling somebody something in the third person. It takes place in the first person.
But, you know, obviously this is not the first time you tackled the life of an artist, but it as opposed to your first film, To Basquiat, this is much more about being an artist. I don't think that At Eternity's Gate has any pretense at being a biopic. This is very much your portrait of Van Gogh.
Absolutely. Yes.
Julian, it's Dennis. Go ahead, please.
No, and hopefully, and I think by using the materials, using the camera a certain way, I feel like we had to be out in nature. We had to be in the landscape that was essential to him, and so we're on both sides of it, in the prelude to painting and the afterlude or aftermath of that, and the way that being involved in your obsession, or we can call it your work, it distances you from people. Obviously, it's a bond also, but usually with people that you'll never meet.
You know, there was something very remarkable that Jean-Claude Carrière, one of your co-screenwriters, said about you and him at the Musée d'Orsay, looking at Van Gogh paintings, and how you brought him up close to the painting and you started pointing out details, the red around the eyes, this and that. And he said that normally, if you think about that, the little details that they would detract, but he said that in this particular case, it opened up a window into Van Gogh that he would have otherwise not had he stepped back or had he gone by the books that he had read.
Well, I think there's a difference between reading about a painting and looking at a painting. So I think there's a difference between being told about an artistic experience or having an artistic experience. There's two questions that all painters have, and that is what to paint and how to paint. And you could say that about a filmmaker or a writer or a poet or anyone that ever wanted to make anything. It's what to do and how to do it.
In that regard, this is would you agree that this is your freest film, where you feel less bound by, you know, the history of filmmaking, and in the sense of just going at your own? I mean, so many of the choices are you hadn't taken before. You know, this is your first editor's credit on your own film. You know, the Ukrainian composer Tatiana Lisovskaya. It's a remarkable score, and she's better known as a violinist. That's a very bold move as well. You know, in your choice of Benoit Delhomme as director of photography, as someone who got into the spirit of it all. You know, I read that at times when he wanted Van Gogh's perspective, that he would even hand the camera to Defoe for him to shoot.
Well, I asked him to do that.
Okay.
I mean, I asked him to do everything that he did. If you look at Before Night Falls or Diving Bell, you probably see a similarity between those movies and this movie. Maybe this one is more extreme, but I basically edited all the films, and even if I didn't take a credit for it, it's not. This is the kind of work that you don't relegate to other people. I mean, you work with other people, but I have a specific idea of what I wanted, and definitely didn't hand it out to anyone and get it back at the end where the job was done. So I'm just saying it's a collaborative experience in every way. In this particular film, working with Louise Kugelberg, yeah, I think that was the most free kind of ending. I think she was able to do some spontaneous and amazing things, but she also knew where all the skeletons were buried and was involved in shooting everything. So it was very, very useful.
She prior to this film, she was and probably still is, an interior designer, no?
Yeah, she actually built the walls that are at the Musée d'Orsay, or the exhibition that is in Aarhus, and installed the paintings actually that were in that show in Denver, Dean, the one that was at the Clyfford Still Museum, and also the paintings that were in Aspen. So yeah, she's a visual thinker.
I'm going to turn it over to Dennis now.
Dennis, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I called him
No
Dean.
worries. Listen, I was wondering about the use of this kind of bifocal lens that was pervasive, particularly when you were outdoors, where the bottom half of the screen was not focused and the sky was always in very crisp focus. Could you talk a little bit about that decision?
I liked the way it looked.
Good answer.
And I also felt that when you were seeing that, you knew that it was a different perspective than, say, when it seemed more objective. So it made it very clear that something else was happening at that moment. And I think it made it clear also that ultimately that it was his point of view, and that his point of view got more exacerbated as he got more upset or things got more difficult. So ultimately it was an intuitive decision when we wanted to use that. But I was fascinated by the way that the split diopter looked, particularly when he was running outside of the asylum.
Yeah.
And the trees, and he started bouncing up and down and going, and then he runs into his own point of view, and the trees are cut in half, and then it goes back to a blue sky, and then all of a sudden the screen turns yellow again, and then he sees the woman on the road with the sheep, and it seems as if they were like stencils that were cut out that were floating in the ground. So I just think there were opportunities to look at things a different way.
Similarly, the camera was almost never just on sticks. I mean, it was always moving. I assume that was the same, trying to take advantage of him, and his frenetic activity.
Yeah, it never was on sticks,
Yeah.
even when it's really still. I mean, Benoit is an expert with it. I liked it to be breathing.
And you can feel that throughout the film. The other question I was wondering was, from what we know about Van Gogh, I mean, Willem was really a dead ringer, but how much of that was about him having that physical presence versus his, him being the actor for you?
I don't think you can separate him from his physical presence, and he has the depth of character, and the feeling is in him. I think that what he did was he accessed a feeling that lives in him, and he applied that to this experience that he was having, and he took us with him in there. And I think what he did is a transfiguration. It's not really a performance.
I was particularly taken aback by his eyes. I mentioned to my daughter with whom I saw the film in New York, I said, I didn't know you could act with your eyes. I mean, it's not the first time he's played a role this passionate. I mean, he played Jesus, but it's not just the facial features. It's like you said. It's very peculiar. It is more than a performance and more like a transformation. I think you don't have.
I was with Marty Scorsese in Marrakesh a week ago, and we saw the movie, screened it, and he told me he thought it was Willem's best performance. It was absolutely the most powerful and transcendental performance that he gave. I mean, Marty he directed The Last Temptation of Christ, and he loved the movie and the editing, and it was a very nice. It's nice to get the ball back in your court sometimes. So yeah, I think he felt that way. I feel that way. I think it's a emblematic moment. I've known Willem for 30 years, but I've never seen. He showed us something that we've never seen before.
I wanted to ask about the painting of the paintings, because I had read a little bit about that. Could you talk about? I saw there were 3 credits at the end of the film. You,
Edith.
Edith, and Willem himself. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I thought it was very important for the painter to paint the paintings, and you never really see that in a movie. So I wanted him to hold his brush the right way and get familiar with the material, so we spent time doing that. using those materials and making sure that they were accurate. And then uh, he learned how to paint. He learned how to look a different way. Instead of seeing something as a complete image, uh, I taught him how to paint the light in. And by painting fragments of what he was looking at and the way the light was hitting and making these different shapes, finally you complete the painting, and all of a sudden an image comes out of it. And I think that you see that in the film, and it operates in a dramatic way. You want to see if it's going to come out looking like something. And it looks like a Van Gogh painting of shoes at the end of the scene in the room near the Hotel de la Gare.
Julian.
But also, I guess it's great to go from that to seeing those dead sunflowers, which we just happened to find because it was that time of year. And when I saw that, I thought we needed to have that in the film.
Julian, the discovery of this notebook with 65 drawings in it, did that come when you were well into this, or did it come fairly early for you?
No, I knew about it before we made the movie, and I thought it was a good way to show him working in nature and time passing, and also the incongruity between life and art, and the fact that the woman would receive the book 126 years later. Do you think that people in the audience have some questions?
That's
Here we go. I'll walk.
That's exactly what we were going to ask. Oh, and by the way, we also have an old friend of yours, the actor who played Lezama Lima in Before Nightfall. Say,
Manuel is there?
Manuel is here. Wave, Manuel.
I can't see you, but I feel you. It's funny, I watched Before Night Falls the other night with Louise and her family, and she remarked to me, yeah, I know who wrote that line, these croquetas they're so good and they don't stick to the roof of your mouth. And I had to say to Louise that I didn't write that you were very familiar with your croquetas, and you gave me that line.
Hi. Hi, Julian. I was wondering.
Hello.
My name's Val. I was wondering about angels. There were a couple lines about them, but I felt like it was maybe one of the images that you didn't try to visualize.
What is your question?
It's about angels. Van Gogh talks about angels a couple times, and he says that sometimes they're not even friendly. Can you understand?
Well, I mean, I think that's Van Gogh talking about angels. I mean, I don't have the same kind of relationship with angels, but I liked when he said that an angel is not far from people that are ill, and I think his relationship with angels changes according to his mood, and obviously, when he's talking about it with his brother at the hospital, he's having a hard time. When he's talking about angels with Dr. Gage later, I think it's quite positive and soothing. So, I can't imagine what his relationship with angels was really like. I could just posit a couple of references to what he was saying and let you kind of make that up rather than me tell you what to think.
By the way, Julian, you're before primarily an audience of artists, from the Art Center, South Florida. So here's another question.
Hi, Julian. Wonderful film. My name is Gabriel. I'm a filmmaker and artist from going back from when I was really young. Even with an experience of mental illness myself that I had to go through. But I wanted to ask you if you've gained or gleaned any particular insight making this film about Van Gogh that you perhaps isn't widely known, something that you came to really understand through the making of this film.
I mean, when Van Gogh says in the movie, I am my paintings. I would say that I am my movie, or I am my paintings also. So I think you learn truisms from being familiar with the materials and with and making something. I feel like talking about something after the fact is, it might be entertaining, but it's not necessarily that helpful. I think that everything I really have to say is in the movie. But one thing that happened was I have an exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris now, where I selected paintings by Van Gogh and Gauguin, Cézanne, Toulouse-Lautrec, Courbet, Manet, and some paintings of mine. And I was, the self-portrait by Van Gogh is hanging next to a painting of mine, and I was looking at his painting because I had to stay still for a photograph. And I've seen the painting hundreds of times. You know all the elements, but they just assemble themselves in front of your eyes, and then they show you something that you can't quite comprehend. I don't know what's happening with this machine, but a lot of static on it, no?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
We have another question. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Talia. Beautiful film, thank you. I was wondering if the restlessness of the filming had to do with your own style or something more reflective of Van Gogh's anxiousness, as well as the sunbeams and the shots of him running. Was that supposed to be particular to his own freedom, or something that you tried to interpret from his own paintings?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was rushing. I mean, if you think that he made most of the paintings that he made in the last couple of years of his life, it seemed like he was rushing against time. And I think we established that nature is freedom for him. And he has everything out there. So I think when he escapes from the asylum, or I think he spends a lot of time running from something and running to something. I mean, it's funny how we go through life being active. Sometimes we feel compelled to go somewhere. We get on an airplane, we go to Mexico, we go to Europe, we go to the store, we got to get out of the house, we got to go inside. All these human beings kind of keep changing their code somehow and reacting to different situations. And I think that maybe it was something I did unconsciously, but I think it felt like reality.
Julian, the last question. We don't want to keep you up too late.
It's too late for that.
Okay.
Good morning, Julian. My name is Peter. A wonderful film, as all of your other portraits. I think Van Gogh, in many ways, is the quintessential tragic picture of the artist, and he is, in many ways, he encapsulates a lot of cliches about artists. So how did you meet that challenge? I think you did it wonderfully, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, carefully. I did it carefully. Because I think that even just talking about Van Gogh sounds like a cliche. I think it's sort of impossible to make a movie about him, and maybe that's why we did it. I really didn't want to make a movie about Van Gogh, but somehow in the doing of it, I realized that everybody's got this personal relationship with him. Whether your mother put a magnet on your refrigerator when you were a kid, or for some reason everyone has some kind of relationship with him since they were little. And for better or worse, at first it's sort of off-putting, because even in the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, you walk in there and you see a video projection of Joni Mitchell as Vincent Van Gogh, or all the actors who played him, and it's really kind of offensive, but how do you tell the people there that to get rid of that stuff when it kind of is, it's the Van Gogh boutique and it sells tickets. But I think ultimately what we try to do, and what I'd like to do, is have you think about making a painting and think about just looking at a painting, and maybe when you look at the world, you look at the world and you think about how would it be as a painting, and can a painting embody that? And I think that he did that, and so that's a life's work.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you.
I know you're a real enthusiast, and I appreciate the feelings. So I wanted to say yes. I guess I'm going to go to sleep now because we're going to fly back to New York tomorrow morning.
All the best, Julian. Thank you so much.
So what was the big man sitting in front of on the movie screen, or what does it look like?
Your right eye.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's way better.
It is. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Julian. Bye-bye.